In over 40 years on this bench, I have seen things that would break most people's hearts. I have seen mothers weep. I have seen veterans tremble. I have seen children look up at me with eyes carrying one silent question: is this world fair? Most days I do everything in my power to answer that question with a yes. But some days, someone walks through that door and reminds me just how ugly human beings can be when they believe money makes them permanently untouchable. This is one of those days. Stay with me, because I promise you, this story does not end the way she expected it to. It was a Tuesday morning, March 14th. Approximately 10:47 a.m. on Benefit Street in Providence, Rhode Island. The air was cold, a thin layer of frost still clinging to the windshields of the cars parked along the curb. I know the exact time because it was logged precisely in case number 2024 CR0847, filed with the Providence Municipal Court. I know the location because I have walked those streets myself many times, thinking about my father and what he always told me about respect. He used to say, "Frank, respect costs nothing to give and everything to lose." I think about that often. I think about it every time I look out at the faces in this courtroom, and I thought about it especially hard the morning I looked up and saw her walk in. Her name was Victoria Ashworth Crane, 29 years old, the only daughter of Senator Douglas Ashworth Crane, a man whose family had lived in Newport, Rhode Island for 4 generations. Old money, the kind of money that has portraits hanging in hallways and attorneys permanently on speed dial. Victoria had constructed her own little empire, an Instagram account with over 412,000 followers, filled with photographs of herself in Capri, in Saint-Tropez, in the back of private jets, holding glasses of champagne that likely cost more than most families spend on groceries in a week. On the morning she walked into my courtroom, she wore a cream Chanel blazer tailored so precisely it appeared to have been sewn directly onto her body. Her bag, and I noticed because my clerk Maria pointed it out afterward, was a Hermes Birkin in noir, $45,000. Maria confirmed it on her phone. $45,000 on one arm, and on her wrist, a 2-tone gold Rolex that caught the courtroom light every single time she moved. She walked in like she was stepping onto a runway, head high, eyes forward, a small smile on her lips that told me she expected this to be over quickly. She had an attorney naturally, Bradford Elias, Esquire, from the firm of Elias, Whitmore & Cole, a firm I had seen in this courthouse before, typically attached to cases where someone was attempting to make a problem vanish through paperwork. Bradford wore a $5,000 suit and set his leather briefcase on the table with a quiet, deliberate click that said, "We are not concerned." He leaned over and whispered something to Victoria. She laughed. In my courtroom, at 9:05 in the morning, before I had read a single charge. I made a note of that. I always make notes. Now, let me tell you about the other person in this story, because Victoria Ashworth Crane is not the heart of what happened that day. The heart of this story is a man named Marcus Webb, Sergeant Marcus Webb, United States Army retired, 34 years old. He served 3 tours of duty in Afghanistan, 2010, 2012, and 2015. On September 3, 2015, an IED explosion in Kandahar province earned him the Purple Heart. He took shrapnel to his left leg and left side that required 4 surgeries and 18 months of physical rehabilitation. When Marcus came home, he came home changed, quieter than when he had left. His wife, they had married young right before his first deployment, tried her best, but by 2018 the marriage was over. Not because either of them were bad people, simply because war does things to people that no amount of love can completely undo. Marcus had custody of his 2 daughters, Destiny, who was 9 at the time of this incident, and Brianna, who was 7, 2 little girls who called their father their hero, who drew pictures of him in his uniform and pinned them to the refrigerator with magnets, who went to bed every night knowing that their daddy had protected this country and was now protecting them. Marcus worked as a parking enforcement officer for the city of Providence, badge number 0774, 2 years on the job, $31,000 a year. He lived in a 2-bedroom apartment on Lauren Avenue, 3 blocks from his daughter's school. He took the bus to work. He packed his own lunch every single day. He was the kind of man my father would have shaken hands with and said, "Son, You are what this country is supposed to look like. I mean that, every word of it. On the morning of March 14th, Marcus was making his rounds on Benefit Street. At 10:47 a.m., he documented a yellow Lamborghini Urus, license plate AW Crane 1, a custom vanity plate registered to Victoria Ashworth Crane, illegally parked in a designated handicap zone directly in front of Café Noir. No handicap placard, no handicap plates, just parked there, like the law simply did not apply to her. Like those blue lines on the pavement were someone else's concern. Marcus did exactly what he was trained to do. He pulled out his device, logged the vehicle, and began writing the citation. He had been doing this for approximately 2 minutes when she came out of the cafe, coffee in one hand, Birkin on the other arm. When she saw the ticket, she stopped walking. And then she said, and these are her exact words, documented by Officer Patricia Lennon, badge number 0421, who was standing 12 feet away. "Are you kidding me right now? Do you have any idea who my father is?" Marcus remained completely professional. "Ma'am, your vehicle is parked in a handicap zone. I am going to need your license and registration." She told him she was not giving him anything. She told him he should get a real job. And then Marcus said something quiet and calm and entirely professional. He said, "Ma'am, I am just doing my job. I served this country for 12 years. I am asking you to cooperate." And that is when it happened. Victoria Ashworth Crane leaned forward, looked Marcus Webb directly in the eyes, and spit on him. Not an accident, not a stumble. She looked at him, and she made a choice. The entire thing was captured on Officer Lennon's body camera. Timestamp 10:51:34 a.m., 4 minutes and 34 seconds of footage that changed everything. I have been on this bench for 42 years. I have seen assault. I have seen battery. I have seen things that made grown men in this courtroom cover their mouths with their hands. But when I watched that body camera footage, I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. A deep, cold anger. The kind you have to hold extremely carefully, or it stops belonging in a courtroom entirely. I held it carefully, because that is what justice requires. You think this is a story about a parking ticket. You think it ends with a fine and a reluctant apology. Stay with me, because you have not seen half of what was waiting inside that courtroom, and I want to dare you right now to stay through every moment, because if you leave before this is over, you will miss the most important part. This is not a story about a parking ticket. This is a story about what happens when this country finally says, enough. Victoria's attorney, Bradford Elias, was on his feet the moment I called the case, speaking before I had even finished my sentence. He said his client was prepared to accept responsibility for the parking violation and pay any applicable fine. He described the assault charge as a significant overreach by the prosecution. He delivered it smoothly, rehearsed, the way lawyers speak when they have done this 100 times and never once sat on the wrong side of a consequence. I let him finish. My father always told me, "Frank, let a man empty his cup before you pour anything new into it." Then I looked at Victoria. I asked her to stand. She rose slowly, as though standing for a judge was something she was still deciding whether to do. I asked how she wished to plead. She glanced at Bradford. Bradford nodded, and she said, "Not guilty to the assault charge. I will pay the parking fine." She said it the way you say you will pay for something you accidentally broke and have no particular feelings about. She said it without once looking at Marcus, not a glance. He was sitting in the gallery with his hands folded in his lap, wearing his city uniform, badge polished, shoes clean, a man carrying more dignity in his posture than she had in her entire wardrobe, and she did not look at him once. I called Officer Patricia Lennon forward. Officer Lennon, a 15-year veteran of the Providence Police Department, walked to the microphone and described exactly what she had witnessed. "Your Honor, I was approximately 12 feet from Sergeant Webb when Ms. Ashworth Crane approached. I clearly observed the defendant make deliberate eye contact with Sergeant Webb and then expel saliva directly onto his face and chest. Sergeant Webb did not provoke this action in any way. He remained professional throughout. When Officer Lennon said the word saliva, someone in the gallery gasped. I heard a woman behind me whisper, 'Lord have mercy.' I looked at Victoria. She was studying her fingernails. We played the body camera footage. a 24-inch monitor positioned to the left of my bench. The courtroom went very quiet. The yellow Lamborghini, the blue handicap lines, Marcus standing with his citation device, and then Victoria's face. You could see the precise moment she decided to do it. Half a second before it happened, visible in her eyes. There was no confusion, no accident, just a decision that said, "You are beneath me, and I can do whatever I want to you." The footage ran for 47 seconds. When it ended, the room stayed still. Then Bradford Elias was on his feet. He said his client had experienced a very difficult week, that she had recently suffered a personal loss, that she had not been in her right mind. He asked the court to show compassion. I looked at Bradford very steadily. "Counselor, did you just use the word compassion in this courtroom while your client sits there examining her nails?" Bradford opened his mouth, closed it, sat down. Victoria, for the first time, looked up at me. The expression on her face was not fear, it was not remorse, it was irritation, the kind of irritation someone feels when a waiter is taking too long, and that look, right there, told me everything I needed to know about who Victoria Ashworth Crane truly was. Marcus came forward next. He settled into the chair across from me, cleared his throat, and told me in his own words what had happened. "Your Honor, I was just doing my job. I wasn't trying to cause any trouble. I noticed the vehicle in the handicap space and started writing the citation. When the lady came out, I tried to explain the situation calmly." He paused. He looked down at his hands for a moment. "When she spit on me, I just stood there. I didn't react. I've been through a lot worse over in Afghanistan." Another pause. "But I'll be honest with you, Your Honor. It wasn't the spit that got to me. It was my daughter." I asked him what he meant. "Destiny, my older girl. She was with me that morning. She sometimes walks with me on my route before school. She saw the whole thing. She was standing right behind me." He stopped, pressed his lips together. "She's 9 years old, Your Honor," and she looked up at me afterward and asked, "Daddy, why did that lady do that to you? Did you do something wrong?" He stopped talking. "I will tell you plainly. There were grown men in that courtroom who were not entirely composed in that moment. I was not entirely composed myself." Victoria's attorney immediately rose. "Your Honor, the presence of the child is irrelevant to the charge at hand. Sit down, Mr. Elias." He sat down. Victoria crossed her arms. I looked at her directly. "Miss Ashworth Crane, a 9-year-old girl, watched her father, a man who gave 12 years of his life to this country and carries Purple Heart shrapnel in his body, get spit on, and you have not looked at him once since you walked into this building. I want you to look at him right now." The courtroom went completely still. Victoria turned her head slowly. She looked at Marcus and looked away. Just like that. 2 seconds, like he was something on a screen she could scroll past. "Now, here is where this story goes somewhere darker, and I need you to stay with me, because what came next, I did not see coming either, and I have been doing this for 42 years. Sometimes justice reveals itself in layers, and the deeper you go, the more clearly you understand why certain people end up sitting across from me. Drop a comment right now and tell me, what do you think we found? Because what my clerk Maria brought to my bench on a single printed sheet of paper completely transformed the nature of this case. Are you the kind of person who believes justice stops at the surface? Or do you believe, as I do, that the truth always finds its way up to breathe? My clerk, Maria Souza, 23 years in this courthouse, a woman who has seen virtually everything, came to the bench during a brief recess at 11:15 a.m. and handed me a printout. Someone in the gallery had been following Victoria's Instagram. At 11:03 that morning, 12 minutes into active court proceedings while she was sitting at that defense table, Victoria Ashworth Crane had posted to her Instagram story. The post was a vertical video recorded, we later confirmed, at 10:58 a.m., 7 minutes after the incident and before she had been formally arrested, from inside her Lamborghini. In the video, she was laughing, lipstick fresh, coffee still in hand, and she said to her 412,000 followers, and I am reading directly from the transcript entered into evidence as Exhibit 7, "Oh my God, you guys, I just got a parking ticket from the most pathetic little soldier man. Sorry, sweetie, that uniform does not make you special. Go find a real job." Then she laughed, and the video ended with a peace sign and a crown emoji. By the time Maria printed it, the post had 47,000 views. Maria spared me from reading the entire comment section, but she highlighted 3 entries she felt I needed to see. The first, Queen behavior LMAO. The second, she really said, thank you for your service, LOL. And the third, the one that I will never forget for as long as I sit on this bench, was a response posted by Victoria's own account at 11:09 a.m. A commenter had written that the soldier probably had PTSD and a family. Victoria's reply, not my problem, sweetheart. Maybe he should have stayed in the sandbox. The sandbox. She called Afghanistan the sandbox. She called Sergeant Marcus Webb's 3 tours of duty, his 4 surgeries, his Purple Heart, the sandbox. I set that printout down on my bench very carefully. I folded my hands. I took a breath. I looked at Bradford Elias. He was reading it over my clerk's shoulder, and his face had changed entirely. The rehearsed confidence was completely gone. He looked like a man who had just realized that the briefcase full of documents he carried in that morning was not going to be remotely sufficient. But we were not finished. The Providence Police Department's Digital Crimes Unit, notified by Officer Lennon at 10:55 a.m., case supplement number 2024 CR0847S1, had been running a background check on Victoria Ashworth Crane since before she set foot in my courtroom. And what Detective Raymond Cho, badge number 1136, uncovered was not just a parking violation and a single assault. It was a pattern. Between January and March of 2024, Victoria Ashworth Crane had been involved in 3 separate incidents with city workers and service employees: a sanitation worker on Federal Hill, whom she had struck with her car door and called a waste of oxygen; a postal carrier on Waterman Street, whom she had drenched with the remainder of her cold brew coffee when he knocked on her door requesting a signature; and a school crossing guard named Edith Ruiz, 67 years old, grandmother of 5, who Victoria had screamed at and physically shoved when Edith asked her to move her vehicle out of a school safety zone. None of those 3 incidents had resulted in formal charges. 2 had been resolved quietly through private payments. Edith Ruiz, a woman who earned $14 an hour keeping children safe, had signed a non-disclosure agreement and received a check for $3,000. $3,000. To agree to be silent about being shoved by someone who had decided her life was worth less than a weekend brunch. Detective Cho was present in the courtroom. He walked to the microphone when I called him, stood straight, and read from his report in a steady, clear voice. Every word landed like a stone. Bradford Elias objected 3 times. I overruled him 3 times. And each time I said overruled, I watched Victoria's jaw tighten, until by the 3rd time she was gripping the edge of the table with both hands and the knuckles beneath that Rolex had gone white. And then she did it. She leaned forward and she looked at me. Judge Frank Caprio, 42 years on this bench, son of a Providence neighborhood, child of immigrants who worked with their hands and were proud of every moment of it. And she said, loud enough for the entire room to hear, "Do you know how much my father donates to this city? You are a municipal judge in a city hall courtroom. My father built the wing of the library you probably cannot even afford to get a card for." Silence. Complete, total silence. A woman in the back row said simply, "Oh." Bradford Elias put his hand over his face. Victoria crossed her arms again, satisfied with herself, like she had just played a card that ended the game. I did not raise my voice. I never raised my voice. My father raised me to understand that the quieter you are in a moment of genuine anger, the more power the words carry when they arrive. I looked at Victoria Ashworth Crane and I said, I grew up 3 blocks from this building. My father worked double shifts so that I could attend law school and sit in this chair. I received my library card when I was 7 years old. I have had it ever since. Every person who has ever stood before me in this courtroom, the wealthy, the struggling, the proud, the humbled, they have all stood on the same floor. You are standing on that same floor right now, Miss Ashworth Crane, and on this floor, your father's name means absolutely nothing. If you are still with me right now, still here, still breathing through every moment of this story, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel exists for. We are a community that believes something. We believe that a badge number, a parking citation, and 12 years of military service matter more than a $45,000 handbag. If you believe that, like this video right now, let the world know we are here, we are watching, and we are not going anywhere. because the best part of this story is about to begin. The door to my courtroom opened at 11:52 a.m. I remember the exact time because I had just told the bailiff we were taking a 5-minute recess before I delivered my ruling. I was standing at the water pitcher on my clerk's desk. The door opened and a man walked in, tall, gray at the temples, dark navy suit, an American flag pin on his lapel, Senator Douglas Ashworth Crane. I had never met him personally, but I knew his face the way you know any face that appears on campaign signs and televised Senate hearings. He walked in without a sound. He sat in the back row of the gallery. He did not look at me. He looked at his daughter. Victoria saw him the instant he entered. For the first time since she had walked through my doors that morning, she looked uncertain. She turned to Bradford and whispered something urgent. Bradford turned, saw the senator, and turned back with the expression of a man who has just understood that the problem is considerably larger than he estimated. I returned to the bench. I looked at the senator. He gave me a single nod, the kind that does not ask for anything. It simply acknowledges. I called the session back to order. Before I could speak, Senator Ashworth Crane stood. "Your Honor, if I may." "You may." He walked forward down the aisle, slowly, and stood at the rail. He looked at his daughter. Then he looked at Marcus Webb. And something in his face, something real, something that all the money and all the campaign photographs had not completely managed to bury, broke open. "Your Honor, I served in the United States Army from 1987 to 1991. I know what it means to put on a uniform. I know what it costs." He paused. He looked at Victoria again. "I did not raise my daughter to behave this way, and I am standing here not to ask for leniency, but because Sergeant Webb and his daughter deserve to hear someone from my family say, 'We are sorry, genuinely and completely sorry.'" Victoria stared at her father. Her mouth was slightly open. I do not believe she had ever heard him say those words in that order before. I think in her world, those words were not supposed to exist. Bradford Elias was very still. The entire room was very still. Senator Ashworth Crane reached into his jacket and removed a folded sheet of paper. "I also want the court to know that I contacted the U.S. Attorney's Office this morning regarding the pattern of conduct described by Detective Cho. I believe those incidents may constitute willful civil rights violations under federal statute, and I have formally requested a review." He folded the paper back. "I will not use my name or my office to shield my daughter from the consequences of who she has chosen to become." He walked back to his seat. He sat down. He did not look at Victoria again. Victoria was very quiet. The arms that had been crossed over that Chanel blazer all morning were now down at her sides. The Birkin bag sat on the floor beside her chair. The Rolex caught the light one final time as she raised her hand and pressed her fingers against her lips. And then I saw something I had not seen from her all morning. I watched it arrive slowly, like weather moving in. Her eyes filled. Not performance, not strategy, just the real thing. The real, terrible understanding of what it feels like when the floor opens beneath you, and the person you believed would always be standing on your side is the one who stepped away. I have witnessed that moment hundreds of times in this courtroom, and every single time, regardless of who the person is, regardless of what they did, I feel something. Not softness, not leniency, just recognition. The recognition that every human being standing in this room is still a human being. That is the weight of this bench. You carry everyone's humanity with you, even when they made you want to set it down. But let me be absolutely clear. Tears do not erase what was done to Marcus Webb. They do not reach back across time and wipe the spit from his uniform. They do not find the words to explain to a 9-year-old girl why a stranger treated her father like he was worthless. And they do not undo the $3,000 that purchased Edith Ruiz's silence when she should have had her day right here in this room. Tears are a beginning, not an ending. And a beginning was not what I was asked to deliver that morning. I was asked to deliver a ruling. I looked at Victoria Ashworth Crane one final time before I spoke. You came into this building this morning and treated it like a minor inconvenience. You treated a decorated veteran like content for your social media. You sat in front of a man who has shrapnel in his body from defending the country you drive through in a Lamborghini. and you did not offer him one single moment of genuine acknowledgement until your father walked through that door. That tells me everything I need to know. I opened the folder in front of me. When I finished, Marcus Webb stood. He said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Just those 3 words, quiet, dignified, the way he had been all morning, the way he had likely been his entire life. I looked at him, and I said, in front of everyone remaining in that room, "Sergeant Webb, this city is fortunate to have you. Your daughters are fortunate to have you. I want you to go home tonight and tell Destiny that what happened to her father was wrong, and that this courtroom saw it, and that it mattered." He nodded once. He picked up his hat from the seat beside him, and he walked out of that courtroom with his back straight and his head high, exactly the same way he came in. Thank you for being here with me today. I mean that completely. Every person who watches this, shares this, takes a moment to leave a comment. You are part of something that matters. You are telling the world that dignity is not a luxury reserved for people with a certain last name, that a uniform means something, that a bench in a city hall courtroom is every bit as sacred as any marble courthouse in this country. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and stay close. Because the next story coming to this channel involves a judge, a surgeon, and a secret that a family waited 6 years to finally see go to trial. You will not want to miss it. I will see you there.